This video is brought to you by Miniature Market. Thousands of board games, discounted prices, miniaturemarket.com.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today, two teams are going to be trying to competitively steal each other's codes by hacking into the computer disk and getting that numerical code. But it's not all about numbers, because in this game you're actually trying to give clever word clues. Today we're going to be taking a look at Decrypto. This is brought to us by Iello in North America. It is for 3 to 8 players. So let me show you how this is played, and I'll see you on the other side. Decrypto is a team game. There's two teams, the black team and the white team. Each team is going to get a board where private clues are going to be placed into these red spots here on each of them, and each team is going to take these awesome floppy disks as codes. So each team will get those. Now, one team, the white team for example, will all sit on one side of the table, and the black team will all sit on the opposite side of the table. Now each team will get delivered these clue cards, which they put inside of here. By the way, there's enough clue cards to last 55 games without seeing the same clue twice. Now this will normally be stood up, which I'll show you in just a moment, but for the ease of video, I've got it laid down flat. So the words green, wing, octopus, and bicycle, these will be the key words for the white team for the entire game. These will not change. Each team will also get a score, a notepad here, and it's going to have the white team on one side and the black team on the other. Both teams will get one of these because both teams will use both sides of them. So from the white team's perspective, it'll look like this, where the black team's obviously would be the opposite, and you can't see what their clues are. You'll never get to see those throughout the game. Now that you've seen how it actually looks while you're playing, I'm going to leave this face up flat on the table for the ease of use for the rest of the video. Now, the game's going to be played over up to 8 rounds, and how you win is by intercepting the other team's clues twice. The first team to do that will win the game. However, when you're giving clues, you have to make sure that your team also can guess them, because if you do not, you'll get one of these penalties. And if you get 2 penalties throughout the game, you lose. So, you lose if you get too many penalties by not getting your team to guess, or you lose if the other team can intercept 2 clues. So the name of the game is intercepting 2 clues of the team while making sure your team can still guess yours. Now though each round does go through different phases, this first phase goes through simultaneously. Each team will select a clue giver. That person will take one of these code cards from their color, and they will look at it secretly. They will not show this to other players on their team, even though they're sitting on the same side of the table. So this will be a number. For example, this is 324. So this means that this player is going to try to give 3 clues, and you're trying to do them in order. So they're trying to get their team to also say 3, 2, 4 in that order. Well, how do they do that? Well, over here in round 1, they're going to have 3 clues. The first one is going to be for word 3. The second one is going to be for word 2. And this one is going to be for word 4. I'm going to leave this face up right now just to keep it easy, but note that nobody would be seeing this except the clue giver. Now both teams are doing this simultaneously for their own team. Once one team finishes, they flip over this 30-second timer, which means the other team only has that much longer to come up with their clues. So again, the team does not see this, and each team is trying to guess what these are. In the first round, there's no interceptions, so this white team would be trying to guess, what are they talking about? And maybe they get it right. They say, you know what, water has got to do with octopus, air has to do with a wing, and land, probably bicycle. So the white team, that's not the clue giver. Anybody that isn't the clue giver will work together, and they'll probably guess the question here as to what those are. The black team will be doing the same thing. Now, only in the first round, since there's no intercept, the clue givers will then give the answers. So this team would yell out, hey, we think it's 3, 2, 4. And the clue giver for the white team would say, yep, you're right, it's 3, 2, 4. And you always put the right answer in this one like this. Plus, also, you can always put the right answers down here. This will help you keep track of things later. So both the black team is writing on their white side of the sheet, and they're doing this, and so is the white team too, because this will actually help them give clues further down the road. Now the black team will be doing the same thing right after that, and both teams will be using the black side of their book saying that. Now remember, the first round there's no interception, so the other team got clues for themselves, arm, reign, and position, and end up being 2, 3, 4. So for future, we know that information. So now we would go to the second round, and this is where we start getting some interceptions. So again, this would get shuffled back into the deck. So theoretically, the same clue could come up twice. A new clue giver from the white team would pick a new clue, and they'd go ahead and write them like before. So here we are in round 2. We're the white team, but we're using the black side. Remember, use both sides in this game. And the black clue giver gave cheese, torso, and cloud. And now simultaneously, both teams are trying to figure out what they have to do with. So now we look at this, we say, okay, cheese, I don't know what that goes with. Torso, probably goes with arm. So the white team is saying, okay, we think this goes with arm. Cloud, maybe it goes with rain. So now we're up to cheese. Does cheese have anything to do with position? I don't think so. So they're just gonna guess one, okay? And so what happens is the black team it's over like this. And so the white team gets to guess first, and we say, we think it's 1, 2, 3. Then the black team gets to guess, and let's say they also say 1, 2, 3. And then that player will flip over the code. So that player on the other side of the table would have the black code, they flip it over, and sure enough, yes, it's 1, 2, 3. Now, when teams of their same color get it right, they get nothing. But it sounds bad, but it's not, because if you don't get it right, that's when you get this. So if that black team did not say 1, 2, 3, they'd get a penalty. And remember, if you get 2 penalties throughout the game, you automatically lose. However, the white team got it correct. And anytime they give the correct answer, you actually write them in right here. And that means that since we got it correct, we get an intercept token. And again, the first team to get 2 of these wins the game. So the white team is halfway to victory. And after that half of the round, you'd flip it over, and the white team would do the same thing. So they've already written these, it's done simultaneously, but then they would go to the black team would get to guess tree, fish, and vehicle, and then the white team would get to guess, and then they would flip over the code and see if it was correct. And you'd keep doing this round after round, doing this sort of ping pong match where some of the rounds done simultaneously, and some of it's done a little bit back and forth. And as the rounds go on, you keep doing this. Now, a couple of words on what you can and can't do. This says 8, and it was referring to octopus, since the octopus have 8. Now, you can't use the word 8 if you're trying to, if this was like 8 letters, for example. You can't do any sort of tricky thing like that. You have to actually be specific. Cards, we were talking about like bicycle cards. They're a manufacturer of playing cards. And energy, green energy. Now remember, it's always easier when it's on your side because you actually know the words and you're trying to put them together, but you're also looking at what you gave before and maybe trying to do something different to throw the other team off as you're doing that. Now since the other team's trying to intercept and you're trying to guess in the same round, it's possible that you might get a penalty token for getting it wrong and the other team might get an intercept token for getting it right, and vice versa. You might get an intercept token for intercepting theirs but getting yours wrong. If at any point in time it's a tie, meaning more than one team wins or loses based upon those conditions, then essentially each of these white ones are worth 1, each of these are worth -1, and whoever has the better score at that time wins. However, many times even then it will be tied, and then each team tries to guess the other 4 words. Whoever gets the most of them right, if it's tied, then it's you share the victory. There's also a 3-player variant where 2 players will be a team, the 3rd player will be the interceptor. The game is played normally, although the interceptor, if they get 2 interception tokens by the end of the 5th round, they win. And if the guessing team gets it wrong, the interceptor gets a token as well. They just need to get 2 of them before the end of the 5th round. Now before we even get started, I must mention that this is a word party game, and I had been told from some colleagues that had played this earlier this year in prototype form that this game, I heard from some that this was a Codenames killer, and I heard from others that this was the next Codename. So I'm gonna review this on its own, but I will be interjecting in and out throughout the review, sort of comparing a little bit to Codenames, since that was the game that really started this whole thinky word game environment in the party field. Now this game has a great look and feel. I love the fact that, you know, when you're trying to get the other team's codes, that they're actually little computer disks. I know some of the younger people watching this video might not even know what that is these days. Back in the day, there were these big 5¼ inch wide disks that you'd use to get data. I love how they incorporated that into sort of trying to steal the data off of that. Now this is a thinky party game. I mean, it does play up to 8, so it definitely is party material, but it's super thinky, very much like how Codenames was, where you've got to be very creative, because you got to use clever, creative wordplay. You're really trying to figure out, how do I get my teammates to get the right code by giving them subtle clues, but I need them to get it right, but I don't want the other team to intercept them. So it's using that clever wordplay, and as the game goes on, it gets harder and harder because the other team's getting more and more information each round, and you've got to start using other methods and different ways to think out of the box, and it is quite thinky. Very much, again, like sort of the Codenames style of things. This game is essentially password on steroids, which is you're giving a clue and the other team is getting to guess first. And there was another game similar this year that had come out with this style of play that I also called password on steroids, which was called Crosstalk. And this was very similar to this, but much more, I'd say, simpler and streamlined, where you're just mentioning a word and the other team gets to guess first, going back and forth, things like that. But it's also similar to that sort of thing. And I had actually mentioned that game was the next Codenames, so it's gonna be interesting to see how we play all this out. And I love that you've got to give those clues that are vague enough, but they've got to be solid for your team to get it. Because if your team misses 2 of them in the game, you've lost, most likely. Unless the other team has lost as well, then you go to the tiebreaker. We'll talk about that later. So it's finding that interesting balance where you're just trying to craft something in the middle there. Not too hard, not too easy, sort of right in the middle, and I like that about that. I also like that as the game goes on, depending on what the scoring is at the point, sometimes you'll need to be really conservative, meaning if you've already gotten one wrong answer, and let's say the other team has not even gotten one intercept yet, you'll be a little bit more conservative. You'll be a little bit more, they'll be easier. You'll try to make them easier for your team to guess, because, if the other team gets the intercept, well, it won't end the game because they don't have any yet, because you need 2. But then on the other hand, if the other team already has if they've already stolen it once and they have the intercept token, then you're going to be, and you haven't missed any, you're going to be very aggressive and try to really shoot far away, be a little bit more creative. And I like how that sort of changes depending on what the game state is. I also love the tiebreakers. Not the tiebreakers themselves, which are just like, this is 1 point, this is -1 point, stuff like that. But if it's a tie at the very end after that, I love the guessing of the words. You're trying to figure out what are the actual words that the other team had behind their screen. And I love that. We actually did that anyway at the end of each game, win or loss, or tiebreaker or not. We would always just let each team sort of try to figure it out, because it's actually fun trying to hear what the words are. I like that there are a ton of these word cards that go in the board, so you can actually play 55 games without reusing any clue words, so tons of replayability here. Anything I didn't like about the game? The game is surprisingly hard to teach the flow to new people that haven't played it before and non-gamers. It's one of those games where the best way to teach it is to literally just start, give them the overview, and then just play the first round through and just take them one step at a time. If you try to explain the flow, you won't really grasp it, because there is, even though it's a simple game, there's the flow to it can be cumbersome. There's a lot of times where you're writing and then they're writing, and then sometimes you're doing it simultaneously, and then they say something, then we say something, then we flip the clue, and then you do it again, but you flip it and it's opposite. And there's a lot to sort of keep track of. Now, after playing even just one game of it, everyone will sort of understand the flow. It will be much more natural. But from the start, for people that might just find this game in a mass market store, who hasn't played many more party games than some of the more popular ones like Cranium and stuff, if they pull this thing out and they try to play it, they're going to be a little bit lost the first time. And I think that's a little bit big of a barrier to entry. I'd say it's definitely harder to teach than Codenames, just because of the flow. But again, I think if you approach it and knowing that, if you just go through and teach it one step at a time, it does get a little bit easier, but it is a little bit harder to teach than a party game typically will be. The game can sometimes have some anti-climactic endings. And again, I'm going to compare a little bit to Codenames here, because a lot of people want to know how this is compared to that. In Codenames, a lot of times you'll end the game, you got to get 3 on the last one. You do this Hail Mary clue that's, vague at best on some of the things, and they get it right, and there's these explosions of happiness, teams high-fiving at the end, where sometimes you can actually win this game with the other team just guessing their own thing wrong, and you're like, okay, we won, yay. But it's not like this explosion. So sometimes it can have some anticlimactic endings depending on what happens. Also, only it comes with 25 games worth of note sheets, because each game you're using the white side and the black side. So I wish they would have doubled the size of the notebooks there. Now, I know they're trying to keep it, it's an MSRP of $20, so they need to keep it under that. And so maybe that would have added the cost and pushed it higher than it needed to be, but it really would have been good. Now they said that you can like print some out, but they're double-sided, white on one side, black on the other side. It's, you know, it's not as easy as some of the other games to print out score sheets for, so I wish they would have included, you know, 50 of them, double of what they did. Now, about this with Codenames. Now, if you did not like Codenames, and you did not like it just because you don't like the whole clever word thinky style of game, you're not gonna like this one. If you didn't like Codenames, which I've heard a lot, some people say this, is you didn't like it because sometimes you'd get an easy draw and it'd be pretty easy to get ahead of the other team and get the words linked. And other times, just because of the draw, you got very hard and it's hard to balance and you didn't like having that randomness. If that's the reason why you didn't like Codenames but you like the idea of it, I think you're really gonna like this one and want to check it out. Again, with this one and Crosstalk, and again, this is very different from Codenames, so they can definitely both be in a collection. They're definitely going to both be in my library, spoiler alert. And that other game, Crosstalk, I really like it, is much more similar to this, but it's also very streamlined as well. I'm probably still going to keep both of them, but I'm not sure if you would need to have both because they sort of fill that same niche. But overall, very clever party game. I loved it. Let's give it a saxophone serenade.
This video was sponsored by Miniature Market's Review Corner. The Review Corner features podcasts, video, and written game reviews by gamers for gamers. Miniature Market, the online gaming superstore. Thousands of board games, discounted prices. Check them out at miniaturemarket.com.